Welcome to Four Eyes, the podcast series that gives you a clear view into the optometry world across Canada and the US. We are four optometrists who graduated from the Illinois College of Optometry and are working across North America. And today we're talking about all things regarding jobs, basically what to expect during the hiring process, interviews, employment contracts, and of course what to actually expect for income as a new grad. We will also go over the pros and cons of completing a residency program. So here are your hosts. I'm Dr. Deepan Kaur.
I'm Dr. Alex Kuhn.
I'm Dr. Ravinder Randhawa.
And I'm Dr. Amrit Bilku. And we have some exciting news at Four Eyes. We finally have an Instagram account. So make sure after listening to this episode to follow us at Four Eyes Optom. So FOUREYESOPTOM, and DM us to share your thoughts or comment on our posts and let us know how we're doing. So the first topic in this episode is, where would you even start looking when it comes to finding a job? What did you guys use as like an outlet to search for jobs?
For me, I definitely was a last minute person and didn't consider looking for jobs until after graduation. And
After graduation?
I think Rav also falls into this category.
I'm the same. I didn't start looking till after graduation as well. But then I wasn't expecting to work till like October too. So I was like, that's okay.
We're really productive people, just letting you guys know.
Yeah, no. But I mean, that's why I was saying like it's important to decide when you want to start working, because I also wanted to take 3 months off after school. Just to relax and travel a little bit and then start working. I just looked online, like Google, Indeed, linked profiles even, Canadian Association of Optometrists website, Canada's Eye Care job site. And there's a lot of postings on those, and that kind of gives you a lot of opportunities.
And you should also get in touch with your frame or contact lens representatives in the areas that you're interested in working in, because they tend to know which optometrists are hiring and the overall vibe of the clinic and the staff, since they're the ones interacting with these optometrists who are hiring regularly.
And ICO also had an area where fourth years could look and see if there's any job openings in different areas and whatnot.
But I feel like it's mainly for the States though. I don't think they had that many options for Canada. But it's like very limited, yeah.
It's going to be limited. Right now, I'm currently looking for a job because my residency program's almost complete. And I'm also using LinkedIn, which I just started my profile like 2 months ago. And then Covalent Careers, I use that one too. That was a really good site with a lot of postings.
Also, a representative from Covalent Careers will email you if you graduated from a U.S. school. They don't have so I got emailed from this representative from Covalent Careers, and I asked about what opportunities they had in Canada. So they have very limited opportunities there. I think there were some in Toronto, maybe some in Vancouver, but they don't really know what jobs are available in Canada. Every province has their association website with classifieds. So if you go there, you'll definitely find what's available.
I found when I was looking for jobs, I found mine I went on the Alberta Association, and under classifieds, they had so many postings available.
Yeah.
And a lot of places who actually even hired someone else, they forwarded my resume to other optometrists that were looking. So that's kind of how I found my job.
Yeah, and then even for those classifieds in the province association websites, make sure you read everything carefully too, because if it's just like a posting that says optometrist wanted and then doesn't say anything about their clinic or whatever, just gives an email, that's possibly a position that you don't want if they're not really revealing any information about their clinic.
And I found those listings particularly really difficult to apply for because, like Rav said, I try to make a cover letter for everyone that I'm applying to, but sometimes the postings will just say, like optometrists wanted full-time, and they don't tell you the name of the practice. They don't even tell you the location. And so I don't know how to make my cover letter, approachable to them, because I don't know, where are you located? Where's your patient base?
I also do want to mention that even though Rav and I started looking for jobs much later, I think it's still important to consider, like look for jobs as early as you can, like attend school events, conferences, where there's a lot of outside optometrists looking for associates. But I'm just like, I think we're just saying if you didn't do that or if you didn't get the chance to network that much in school, it's still going to be okay. Like there's still a lot of opportunities in Canada and the States.
I'm graduating my residency program in June. All the places that I'm applying to are like, oh, are you free now? Are you ready to go next month? And I'm like, no. And they're like, we'll keep your resume. We'll let you know. We'll talk to you in 5 months. And I'm like, okay, bye. If I feel like you have a better chance if you've already made a connection with an OD.
So speaking of connections, what kind of connections are important? Or what do you guys think are important?
So I think when you're doing your rotations, the private practice clinics you work at, those are key. Actually, one of my jobs that I landed was through one of my private practice rotations. So even though I did my rotation in Ontario, Hamilton, my doctor knew people here in Alberta, and she referred me out here, and that's how I got one of my job from that.
Nice.
Yeah. And another hint, like when you're applying for jobs, like do look at optometrists who graduated from your school, because they're actually more likely to hire you if you graduated from the same school. Like you have that kind of connection with them. So
unless
I know,
they were scarred for life and they hated that school so much.
That's true.
They were like, oh, I was going to say for Deepon and Rav, what was your interview process like? What kind of questions did they ask, or what questions did you prepare for?
So for me, the most common question I got was literally just tell me about yourself. Just give me a 60-second summary about who you are and what you're interested in and why you specifically want to work at our clinic. And also talk about like your rotations and everything. So you should kind of have like a 60-second spiel about, where you're from, where you graduated, your externships, and what your interests are in optometry. If you did any residencies or fellowships, and why you want to work at their clinic specifically.
Yeah, mainly people it's not really an interview. They're just kind of asking like, when can you start, your availability on Saturdays.
Yeah, that's
one of the biggest questions they ask, because they don't want to waste time if you don't fit their schedule or you don't fit their needs and when you're available. So they're like, let's just save both parties time.
Were you guys ever asked about having some sort of a business plan, or what contributions would you make to the clinic? Did you have any of that prepped?
Yeah, so that was the second most common question I got asked. Like, where do you think you'll be in 5 to 10 years? What are your career goals? Like, what are your business plans? Exactly. That's kind of what I got asked quite a bit. So I definitely prepared answers to that. So I think that's really important to have that prepared as well.
What were your business goals?
Yeah, what were your...
Well, so mine is to eventually own or partner up with someone to own my own practice. I mean, that's mainly like one of the biggest reasons why I moved to where I moved, right? Because it's has a lot of opportunity for that compared to bigger cities like Calgary or Edmonton. Like you have to see, they just want to see what you're planning to do, or if you're going to leave in like a couple years and kind of do your own thing, or if you're planning to stay there. Because a lot of these employers are looking for someone that's going to stay long term, right? So
it's hard to stay honest in the interview because you want to say the right things because you want to impress them, but then at the same time, in the back of your mind, if you have something different, that person that hires you now is going to be really disappointed in 2 years down the road when you're leaving.
Right.
So I feel like honesty is always like the best policy. If you're really planning to look for a job and you only want to be there for like 1, 2, or 3 years, like short term, you'd have to still show them that you being there for that short amount of time is still going to benefit their practice in the long run.
So it's important to figure that out.
Kind of going more into the interview style. So definitely for phone interviews, you really want to sound kind, welcoming, enthusiastic, happy. You want to sound like all those things because they're not going to be able to see your facial expressions. So anything that you say, even if it's in this like kind of monotone voice, it might come off the wrong way.
On like, you not interview through email, but like when you're applying through email and you're trying to set up an interview, just the way you portray yourself in the email, like add your manners in, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of
And
people
check your
sometimes they
grammar,
don't write
for the love
things.
of God. Please
Yes,
check your grammar.
Deepon's really
I
into
can't.
grammar, guys. She's not gonna
I
hire
can't.
any of
No,
you
but
guys
it's like,
if you
it's
can't spell.
honestly, it's so true. Like, I will, if anyone's grammar is off, I'd be like, nope, next. Yeah. But it's true. You graduated from
Yeah.
graduate school.
Yeah.
You should be able to take the time to read over your emails and check your grammar
Well,
2 or
not
3
only
times, whatever it
that,
takes.
I would also say with the resume itself. I mean,
Yes.
granted, I haven't seen any optometry resumes, but I've seen a lot of resumes just for being a tech or front desk, and there are so many bad resumes.
Yeah.
And make sure you show up 15 minutes early. I know some
Yeah,
people think
that's
this
true.
is ridiculous, but show up 15 minutes early because it does matter. Because if
It does matter,
you
yeah.
walk in at like your interviews at 4, you walk in at 4 or 4:01, you're automatically
You're tardy. Just tardy.
below anyone else.
So when you guys were being interviewed, what did you ask the employer?
The first thing I talked about was, how much am I getting paid?
I'm sure you did not.
No, I did.
Gotta
I
pay off
seriously
those
did. Yeah.
loans.
I was, because, like the optometrist that is hiring you, if they know that you went to a US school, they know how many loans, like what your loans are. So my very first question, to be honest, was, yeah, what is the pay and how will I be getting paid? And they were like, yep, fair enough. Let's talk about that first. Like,
Because it is one of the main things. So I feel like, yeah, they bring it themselves up. Like,
but that's why you should also ask other optometrists, like, well, what is the expected pay? And then you can have that discussion too, right?
We definitely have, when our business manager asks some people if they graduate from a certain
Like a program.
yeah, like a program. And they, in this program, for some reason, they tell them that you need to demand this amount of money or you walk away.
That's really good to point out because, yeah, if you do a specialty program, like for ODs, if you do a residency or a fellowship, I feel like that's a big thing you want to throw out because that's your extra hard work that you did. So you want to be paid accordingly based on the amount of effort you put into all of that specialty training and education. What other things would you ask your employer aside from money?
I think one of, like, a really important one is your income based on the products that you sell or the exams that you see, or is it just a straight up yearly salary, a daily salary? Like,
another one is like, you want to know how many patients are you seeing in 1 hour.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Some clinics you're seeing about 4, some clinics you're seeing about 2.
I think an important question that I asked during some of my interviews were, what is the support staff that you get? So do I get a pre-tester or am I doing all the pre-testing myself as well? Am I working alongside the optician? Are there managers or am I working just by myself all day and no one's around and I'm just lonely?
I think also with the pre-testing, you need to be specific with what exactly pre-testing is being done because there's a big difference between just case history and then you come in and do
Yes,
everything else.
that's
'Cause
true.
depending on the clinic, that might be their pre-testing. You know what I mean?
What did you guys look for in the employment contracts after the interview?
Well, I mean, I didn't really specifically look for anything. I just read mine and went, oh, okay.
Once you
This
asked what
kinda
the salary was, you were like, yeah,
This
that's
is-
good.
I'll sign anything.
No, I think, what the term is, like, there should be an automatic renewal after a year or 6 months to a year is common. Mine was a year.
A lot of people, like when they're starting up, they negotiate 6 months of contract just in case because they're new, and I did that.
So a really good one that I didn't really think about in the past was, is the job paying for any professional fees, licensing fees, malpractice insurance, any of that kind of stuff, which I guess you can also talk about in the interview. But in the contract, I think that's a really important one to check because those are all additional fees that you'll be paying off annually. Oh, and also if they pay for any CE or like time off to do CE.
So in the optometry field, like a lot of them, you're like an independent contractor rather than an employee. Like often, like 90% of the time, you're paying for your own licensing fee, you're paying for your own insurance, and you don't get any money if you're sick or you're traveling for CE. So I think that's one downfall.
There's like pros and
that.
cons to being an independent contractor because you're going to be an independent OD, which is great because that means you're setting pretty much your own hours. You're setting your own fees for the exams and all of the extra services. So that's like kind of an interesting
Yeah, that's
thing.
interesting.
In terms of taxes, I think that's where it becomes really important. Like, you're responsible for your own income taxes, employment insurance, premiums, all those kind of things, and just have a really good accountant. That's what I'm going to say on that.
And then that's where you kind of make some of your money back too, is you can file when you go away for your CE hours. You can file the flight, the stays, the meals.
Yeah, that's really good to know. Well, Alex, since you work with your dad, do you guys have any contract put in place for your practice?
We haven't made a contract, but it's different with my dad and the relationship I have with my dad, where I trust him fully, and I think he trusts me a lot too. I normally would say that everyone should have a contract no matter what, but since it's my dad, it's a little bit different for me. So
Yeah, I feel like we were all thinking like if we were to work with maybe our siblings or even like cousins or even with each other, like even though we're all really, really good friends.
But I don't trust you.
It's still, having no, but having a contract for when there is conflict, it's good to have like the contract as being that mediator.
It is. No, my dad and I have very similar views to how we want to run the practice, and we've talked about it over the years as well. I think we're really similar in our morals as well, which helps.
But those are really good points for anyone that might be partnering up with any other like person that owns a practice. Like, you should be able to talk about all these things and everything. And just with family members, it's really dependent on the person and how they feel about that relationship. So that relationship is personal to that person. So it's only you that can decide if it's a good idea to make a contract with that person. And obviously for Alex, that decision was made for herself because she knows her dad and her relationship, right? So none of us can tell you like, yes, you should make a contract every single time with a family member or friend. That's completely on you. So you have to make that decision.
We also, in this episode, we want to go over what sort of income you should actually expect, especially as a new grad, because we are all new grad optometrists here. What was the expected income that you guys thought of before starting?
So in Edmonton, a lot of places when I was applying, the general offer for like half day of work, so that's like 4 hours, the minimum they will give you is $250. And then for a full day, it's $400. So again, this is you as an independent contractor, so they're not counting taxes. Certain places, they might do additional 10% from all the billings, so not the sales from glasses, so just the eye exams. Often, the additional 10% is normally I've seen in retail, so where you're seeing more patients.
And this is very similar in Calgary.
Yeah, I was going to say, you work in a big city, Rav. So for Deepon, if you work in a rural area, how did you expect your salary to be different?
It depends how rural the rural area is. So I'm like 2 hours to 3 hours away from a bigger city, right? So you should expect a little bit higher of a salary than $400 as the daily minimum. But if you work in like a rural area where there is not any nearby city, like 5 or 6 hours away, there's less competition, but you should also be expecting a much higher salary, like around $150,000 a year. That's what's advertised in Alberta for their more rural areas. But the main reason why they do that is to attract more applicants because nobody really wants to live in those areas, right? The main point I want to make out with that is if you're not accustomed to small town living,
don't do it.
It's probably not for you. Yeah, because
and especially with the things that you can do around the small town, because even like up where I live, it's a small town, but there's so many outdoor activities. If you are not an outdoor person, I do not recommend moving to Alaska.
Or even working in any kind of small town. If you're not an outdoorsy person, if you don't like to do those kind of hobbies that they offer, just double, triple think about where you want to work.
Yeah. It's not good for you. It's not good for the patients. It's not good for anyone.
You want to make sure your mental health, physical health, emotional health is all okay during that time, right?
Yeah. That's pretty much the same story here in California. So the salary ranges, or like the average salary ranges between those different modes of practice, but the average salary would be about $110,000 to $120,000. But there are definitely a lot of job opportunities more in the rural areas of California, and they are definitely offering way more than that. But that's the hard part again, is that it's tough to want to move there if you're definitely a city person.
Yeah.
So I talked to a couple of friends in Ontario, specifically in Toronto, Brampton area. Their pay or income it depends on where you work. So if you're working in an optical store, you are expected to get about 75 to 100% off all the billings. But remember that their exam fees are less because you're not really doing a full exam. So their exam fees are around $60 to $80 because a lot of these places won't have OCTs or visual fields. Optometry clinics, again, it's kind of similar to Alberta, about like 20% of the total sales. But I think it's just more in Toronto, there's a lot more optical stores that have optometrists. But then again, you're only working about 3 to 4 hours as well. And talked to a couple of friends in Chicago as well. Again, Chicago, it ranges around 95 to 120K starting. And also in Chicago, the general rule is $50 an hour. But if you're working in more rural areas, not in heart of Chicago, you can look at starting at about 130K.
Well, that's not what I see in the residency. I don't even see half of that. I see way less. I do want to give in a big plug for residency programs, however, because, I did not decide to do a residency program until like the month before applications even opened up in fourth year. I was like really headstrong on not doing it. I was not interested in the pay. So I was definitely swayed by my attendings during my externship sites, and I totally regret feeling like that in the past because this residency program has been so good to me. There's so many benefits to doing a residency program. It's hard to want to do one when you look at the pay because, yes, the salary sucks. But what's really good about it is that they still give you, your paid time off, your paid academic leave. So you still get to do all your CEs. You get to go to your annual meeting. So there's a big give and take with the residency program. Just because the salary is low, that's not the only thing that you should be focusing on. Because at the end of the day, the residency really does pay off. If you're planning to implement what you learn in your residency program into the real world when you're looking for a job.
I think it's really important to think when you're thinking about a residency, especially if you're coming back to Canada, to consider how, I know we were just talking about this, but how your residency is going to help you. So for example, if you're planning to do a contact lens specialty, I think that's really helpful in a place like Canada because you can bring all that knowledge and training. You should expect a higher salary because you're going to bring more profit, more patients to that practice, right? I guess we should answer why we didn't do a residency now that I really took into consideration the place that I was going to work and what opportunities they provided. Mm-hmm. And I figured, I can learn a lot of these things on my own by going to conferences or CE lectures and taking the time to do that.
I think same thing here as Deepon. Don't think that while you're in school or residency, that's the only time you're going to learn. Definitely you can learn
definitely
as your career progresses, and there's always going to be new technology, always going to be new things that are coming out. So definitely going to seminars.
Optometry is a lifelong learning career. If you didn't know that by now, get out. You're gonna be learning
Alex's
forever.
Dad should have retired by now, but he's still. We saw him at AAO in Orlando, just recently. So he's still learning.
So if you decide to do residency or not do residency, it's fine. But whatever your heart desires or whatever your passion is, it's the right choice. So
for any Canadian optometry students that are on an F1 student visa and doing optometry school in the States, if you are looking to continue working in the States after optometry school, the F1 student visa has an extension called the OPT visa, so optional practical training extension. If you are interested in staying in the States for at least one additional year, you would have to let your optometry school know, because since the visa is under the optometry school, they have to contact USCIS and let them know to change your F1 visa into an OPT.
One last thing we kind of forgot to mention was when you're reading your contract, one thing to look out for is restrictions on certain kilometers. So especially like when you're working or as soon as you're done working, normally a lot of places will have like from 2 to 3 years. You can't work a certain radius. So normally in Canada, it's roughly around 3 to 5 kilometers. Sometimes, so in miles, that's about roughly 2 to 3 miles. So that I think that's very important, especially in a rural area. I had a friend who worked in a rural area, and her restriction was 15 miles.
Wow, that's really high.
Oh, yikes.
So, and also looking at when you can take your vacation times too, right? Because I think you don't realize these things while you're signing it, but you get this after. So, like, again, a friend in Chicago, her contract said that she needs to give a 3 month notice in order to get any time off. So I think that's pretty ridiculous. So I think these
That's
are the
too
things
early.
you want to
Yeah.
negotiate. Main things you want to negotiate.
And I think for any contract or any legal paper that you have, just make sure you have an employment lawyer or someone you trust who is more experienced in
Yeah.
understanding legalities or law lingo to read over that contract so you understand every detail, because you don't want to sign something that you don't understand and then it later bites you and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that, and then you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of resources out there to find lawyers who even specifically help ODs. Because I know some of those types of people came even to ICO,
Yeah.
where they were just promoted, as like if you're thinking of finding a job and you have a contract, bring it over, and they'll give you like a free consultation and things like that.
Thanks everyone for listening to Four Eyes. Make sure to subscribe and look out for new episodes every Wednesday. Until then, stay tuned.